Good evening and welcome to Fantasy Night Live. I'm Brian Raw Reed.
And I'm Mosey Mosenko.
We'll be your hosts, your guides, your fearless leaders through the jungle that is fantasy football.
We're going to help you crush your friends, destroy your enemies, and wreak havoc on your office pool.
Yeah, we love football.
I absolutely love it.
More than our wives.
Ex-wives.
Exactly. This is the only thing keeping us alive, so listen up. Look, we have all the info you need to win this week and every week. Training camps are already underway, so let's go.
Okay, look, draft day is almost upon us. Here are a few key elements to think about. When making your decisions on draft day, strength of schedule can go a really long way.
Yeah, strength of schedule is all about who's got the toughest road. Denver will go from having the easiest strength of schedule in 2013 to the second hardest this year. Now, the Raiders will provide them with two cupcake matchups, of course, but Week 17's Raider game will not help fantasy owners. Most fantasy leagues have their championship games in Week 16. So, why is this bad news for Peyton Manning? That means Denver will be going to Seattle. That's not good. Who unceremoniously just pistol whipped them in the Super Bowl. They will also face a murderer's row of top defenses versus the 49ers, Rams, and the Arizona Cardinals. So the quick upshot from this is that Peyton won't be setting any new passing records this year.
That's right, Brian. My Arizona Cardinals are going to fly circles around those Broncos. Caw-caw! Do the Broncos stand a chance? I say nay.
Wow, that's terrible.
This season's less than 6 weeks away. It's time for owners to test a couple of mock drafts. If you can, get your league's commissioner to set the draft order now. Mock drafts are a huge advantage to fantasy owners. Brian, more importantly, what do you think about this?
Well, there are only so many players that will be available at your drafting slot. This process will help you anticipate who's going in each round, and your strategy will not come unraveled if your favorite player goes one pick ahead of you.
That way you stay ahead of Gary from accounting. Stupid, fat Gary. I actually like to do multiple mock drafts. Some focus on running backs, some on receivers, and a few directed towards top 5 quarterbacks. Then I, of course, review my results while bored out of my mind watching Fat Gary eat tuna from a can.
Yeah, I've gone through 2 mock drafts myself so far, and there are plenty of players who seem to be slipping in drafts that I will be sure to get my hands on draft day. Now, first, Gary Kubiak is the new offensive coordinator in Baltimore. What does that mean for Torrey Smith? He should have the same opportunities Andre Johnson had last year to post big numbers. Look at 2012 for Johnson. 164 targets, 112 catches, 1,568 yards. And last season, 181 targets, 109 catches, 1,407 yards. Those are good numbers.
I'm aware Torrey Smith is no Andre Johnson, but he's big, tall, and a capable receiver. What I really want to know, Brian, what do you think about Joe Flacco this year?
Well, I'm not really crazy about Joe Flacco, but keep in mind, Andre's career high in targets came with meltdown masters Matt Schaub and Case Keenum throwing him the rock. So one thing Flacco does have is supreme arm strength. You combine that with Torrey's speed, and that should mean double-digit touchdowns.
Just what I said.
You never said that.
I'm pretty sure that I did.
You absolutely did not.
All right, now for the special report on some injuries that you should be aware of before the fantasy draft happens.
Hey, boys. I am also liking that Torrey Smith picked Mr. Reed. Your Baltimore Ravens have the 5th easiest schedule for 2014. Okay, now let's take a look at some player injuries you should know that could leave some great players available in the late rounds of your draft or help you if you're on the fence with one of your choices. Rob Gronkowski of New England Patriots. Right now, the consensus is that all signs point towards Gronkowski being ready to go for week 1, although he is not at full go so far in his recent practices. We know that's really all Pat fans need to hear. The Gronk is back. So let's move on. We all know about Knowshon Moreno's knee problems. Moreno could return to practice before the season begins as he continues his recovery from surgery. Moreno's number will be called plenty this season once he returns to full health. Just temper your expectations. Do not expect the same numbers he posted last year. Now, let's talk about Tony Romo, who's coming off back surgery, who said he feels pretty good and is currently steady in his recovery. So far, the team has limited his reps, but will be increasing his workload as the preseason moves forward. Despite Romo being less than 100% physically, he may have the best season stats of his career with pass-happy offensive coordinator Scott Linehan coming over from Detroit. Other notable players with issues are Jonathan Stewart, Carolina Panthers, Cecil Shorts, wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and rookie receiver Odell Beckham. There you have it. Back to you guys.
Wow, she is hot.
Let's Be professional, shall we?
Sorry, you're right.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Fantasy Night Live. Mosey, what's that name that's been on everybody's tongue this summer?
Vladimir Putin.
No, Johnny Manziel.
Right.
Yeah, this young prospect was scooped up by the Cleveland Browns, but controversy seems to follow him wherever he goes. To get a first-hand perspective on Manziel's life, Fantasy Night Live's own Ted Jonas has been embedded with the controversial quarterback for the past week. Good evening, Ted.
Hi, Brian. Hi, Mosey.
Ted, you look terrible. What happened?
Johnny football's what happened.
Johnny Manziel, we know he went to the Cleveland Browns. I heard he had cleaned up his act.
Well, then I don't even want to know what he was like before last night. I have never had so much fun and been so afraid for my life. I want a baby in a bare-knuckle boxing match in Korea, North Korea.
Well, speaking of Johnny Manziel, one of the criticisms, he's 5'11", his size not so good. Did you notice this being a factor?
No, it didn't, Mosey. He killed a giant, a legit giant. We were somewhere in outer Mongolia when the tribal elders got upset with us because Johnny Football had sex with the chief's daughter. Well, that's when he sent out his giant.
What, do you just mean like a guy 7 feet tall?
No, I don't, Brian. I'm talking a giant. This guy was at least 10 feet high, and he killed him. He murdered him.
That's all very impressive, but as we all know, Josh Gordon is facing a season-long suspension, so who's Manziel going to be throwing to?
He'll throw it to his himself. The man outran a cheetah for He challenged a pride of cheetahs to a foot race, and he won. Johnny Manziel is now king of the cheetahs. Oh, Johnny Football's the best.
Teddy.
Now, for the Fantasy Night Live segment you gamblers have been waiting for. Each week we will highlight our favorite bets versus the Vegas odds. I know it's early, but it's not too early to take a peek at those Week 1 lines. There are a couple games jumping out at me right now, so let's have a look. Game 1, the Washington Redskins travel to the Houston Texans. Houston is currently a 2.5-point favorite. This is going to be the Texans' first game under a new regime, and they're still unsettled at quarterback, apparently content to start the season with the brutally average Ryan Fitzpatrick under center. Arian Foster has not played football in a long time, coming off season-ending back surgery. Just tweaked his hamstring this week, actually. So it's an easy call that the Texans will not be a well-oiled machine coming out of the gates in 2014. Now for the Redskins, I'm betting RG3 will go back to playing football instinctively, and we can see him as the type of player he was supposed to be coming out of Baylor. Doesn't have the Shanahan regime breathing down his neck, telling him to play hurt. That could be the difference here. He's comfortable, he's healthy. I like the Skins plus 2.5 in this one.
Okay, moving on to Game 2. New England Patriots are heading off to Miami to take on the Dolphins. Currently, the Pats are 4-point favorites. Probably a direct result of adding Darrelle Revis to the lineup and getting Jared Mayo and Vince Wilfork back as well. This year looks to be the best defense the Patriots have had in a decade. On offense, on the other hand, we can always count on those points from Tom Brady. Outside of Miami's Mike Wallace, who will be getting swarmed by the new Patriots secondary, no one scares me on this Dolphins offense. I'll take the Pats, sexy Brady, and a healthy Patriots defense, -4 versus the Dolphins.
All right, moving on. Our third game, the San Francisco 49ers are heading to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Right now, the Niners are 5-point favorites. Look, until I see Tony Romo and the Cowboys actually win a big game, I simply can't get on board with this team. They've already lost their best defensive player, tackling machine Sean Lee with a torn ACL. That's not a good start for last year's 27th ranked defense. They also just lost an early draft pick to a broken foot today, further weakening that defense. So soft up the middle, no recipe for success against the Niners in the mauling rushing attack. The Niners O-line is healthy, and the additions of Steve Johnson to Michael Crabtree and Quan Bolden And the man beast, Vernon Davis, will give plenty of targets for Colin Kaepernick to distribute the ball to. That's simply too much firepower for the Dallas secondary to handle. Niners are going to take this one on the road. I like the Niners covering that 5-point spread.
Now, with the recent events of domestic abuse charges popping up against NFL players, we have a message from the Football Wives Association.
Thank you. We would just like to let everyone know that we will be holding a women's self-defense class this Tuesday in the Baltimore High School auditorium. Classes are free, and we implore all wives of football players to attend.
Implore?
Yeah. Have you seen what some of these guys do to their wives?
She looks completely fine to me, a little worn out, but what happened to her?
I don't remember. He does it because he loves me.
No, sir.
Okay, welcome back. Now for the FNL top 10 overall players. First, when ranking your top 10, things may change quite a bit depending on your scoring system. Before you draft, hello McFly, know your scoring system and how it works. Then, obviously, take that knowledge and apply it to your strategy during draft day. Standard scoring is an archaic way of doing things in today's world of fantasy football. I want a scoring system to actually reflect a player's contribution to their team. So, on the opposite end of the spectrum, a straight PPR scoring system doesn't really work for me either.
Yes, I agree completely. In our league at FNL, we take an approach somewhere in the middle. Our PPR starts at 5 catches, and then every catch after that gets 1 point. We also give tight ends and running backs a 1-point bonus for hitting that 5-catch mark. So an 8-catch, 95-yard, 1-touchdown effort, that's 15 points in a standard system. It would be 19 in the FNL modified system, where a straight PPR would give that same guy a ridiculous 23 points.
Okay, let's get after that top 10. For now, we'll use our Happy Median FNL scoring system.
So, number 1 overall player, Jamal Charles, running back, Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid will never let you down in fantasy when it comes to running backs. I hopped all over Charles last year in that same Andy Reid system that propelled Brian Westbrook near the top of the fantasy food chain in years past. 2013, let's look at Jamal's numbers. 1,287 rushing yards and 12 TDs on the ground. He added 70 catches, another 693, and 7 TDs in the passing game. It's nearly 2,000 yards from scrimmage and 19 TDs his first year in a system. I love his chances of ending up as the top fantasy player this season.
FNL has chosen its number 2 is LaShawn McCoy, running back, Philadelphia Eagles. Here's another guy who kicked ass in a running back friendly system last year. 2013 was McCoy's first year in Chip Kelly's offensive system, and Kelly will run that rock till the wheels come off. Last year, McCoy had 1,600 yards and 9 TDs and added 52 catches for 539 yards and 2 TDs in the passing game. McCoy is young, he is in an ideal Chip Kelly system, and is bound to produce big in 2014. I really think that it's the versatility of these guys in the passing game that translates into big points each week.
Yes, sir. Going to number 3, our first wide receiver on this list, none other than Megatron, Calvin Johnson, wide receiver, Detroit Lions. Now, I know Calvin had an off year by his standards, but he's been on my squad 3 years in a row now. No one can dominate a game like Johnson when things are clicking. His stats dipped along with his quarterback, Matt Stafford's inconsistent play. The Lions brought in a quarterback guru, Jim Caldwell, spent many years in Indianapolis coaching a guy you may have heard of, Peyton Manning. So, under Caldwell, Stafford's mechanics and efficiency, they're going to improve. And that means, of course, his number 1 target will reap the benefits. Calvin's going to clear 100 catches, he's going to top 1,500 yards, and he's scoring 14 to 16 touchdowns.
Okay. The pain in my personal side for the last 3 years. FNL's number 4, Mr. Matt Forte, running back, Chicago Bears. Forte had over 1,300 yards and 9 TDs on the ground last year and added 74 catches for just under 600 yards and 3 TDs through the air. In year 2, under Trustman, Forte should be able to improve his numbers and keep his touchdowns in double digits. Also, the Bears' passing game features 2 of the best in the league, Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. So, Forte is not the only guy teams have to worry about.
Yeah, the Chicago Bears are absolutely loaded on offense. Pick your poison here. I think that team's making some noise in the NFC this season. All right, our number 5 player, Adrian Peterson, running back, Minnesota Vikings. Old Reliable is another guy who will benefit from a new offensive scheme. Norvell Turner, who was able to launch LaDainian Tomlinson to fantasy gold in San Diego, did the same years ago with Emmitt Smith in Dallas. That Cowboy team won back-to-back Super Bowls, and all 3 years Turner was coordinating that offense. Emmett led the league in rushing. So it's a lock. Peterson will be the centerpiece of the offense, and he's going to be delivering points week in and week out. You see the trend here. Coordinators are a huge factor in weighing your choices, so ranking AP this high shows that I have the faith in Turner will be getting his workhorse back. More than 50 catches, 400 yards in the passing game as well.
Okay, we'll be right back with our 6 through 10 players, starting with a controversial call that some may argue, but since we don't care for those who argue with us, we're going to tell you anyway who could be the missing link in your championship. The wind beneath your wings, the secret in your garden, the apple of your eye, the metaphor of all metaphors, Brian.
That's all you got?
That's all I got.
All right, we'll be right back.
Okay, welcome back. Before our break, we gave you the FNL 1 through 5. And now let's get back into it with our 6 through 10.
Okay, at number 6, I'm going to go with Jimmy Graham, tight end, New Orleans Saints. A tight end this early, you ask? Well, Jimmy is no ordinary tight end, and he is the favorite target of Drew Brees, who continues to eclipse that 5,000-yard mark year in and year out. Why on earth would you not want his number one target, who's heads and shoulders above everyone else at his position? Exactly, you do want him. Don't be scared to pull the trigger and grab Graham at number 6. Graham could easily post 100 catches, 1,250 yards, and 15 big touchdowns. Now over to the lovely Casey O'Keefe with our number 7 pick.
Thank you, Brian. My man and our number 7, Peyton Manning, quarterback, Denver Broncos. He is the top QB for obvious reasons this year after a record-setting 2013 season with 5,477 yards and a record 55 touchdown passes. Denver reloaded with Emmanuel Sanders and Cody Latimer, who's another big target at 6'3", 216 pounds, and should emerge late in the year. Demaryius Thomas will again lead this team in receiving, and you can expect double-digit touchdowns out of tight end Julius Thomas. I see an easy 5,000 yards again, and 42 touchdowns. Peyton's numbers will be down a bit from 2013 with that second hardest schedule we talked about earlier.
And now for our number 8, Mr. Dreamy, Drew Brees quarterback, New Orleans Saints. Brees has averaged 5,272 yards and 43 touchdowns for the last 3 seasons. And Sean Payton's offensive wizardry is back in New Orleans for another season. As we said earlier, 6'6" Jimmy Graham is a matchup nightmare for teams, especially in the red zone. And Brees will once again have old, reliable Marquise Colston at his disposal. The Saints also drafted Brandon Cooks out of Oregon State in the first round, who supposedly is operating on a different gear so far in training camp. Brees is as steady as they come, but be aware, his numbers outside of the Superdome are nowhere near what they are at home. Food for thought. Now back to you boys as we talk about some Lacy things.
Lacy things, my favorite. FNL's number 9, Eddie Lacy, running back, Green Bay Packers, a.k.a. Bigfoot. Yep. He's going to blow some minds this season. Last year, with the strong rookie season, he racked up 1,178 yards and 11 TDs in 15 games, and another 257 yards and 35 catches. He did all of that in a handful of games and a sprained ankle. He is the man in Green Bay's backfield, and with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, will give defenses no chance to stack the box against this guy. And, of course, players tend to make huge strides in their sophomore campaign, and I can see Lacy hitting, I don't know, about 1,400 yards with 50 catches for another 400 yards and 15 TDs. This dude, as Brian would say, is an absolute beast.
All right, and last but not least, our number 10 player is DeMarco Murray, running back, Dallas Cowboys. Now, Murray had 1,121 yards and 9 TDs in just 14 games last year, tacking on 350 receiving yards on 53 catches with another score. Now, he's yet to play a full season due to injury, but should see a bump in his receiving statistics with Scott Linehan coming over from Detroit. Scott loves to get big production out of the running back position, and Murray does not have a potent backup to steal his thunder. The Cowboys will be brutal defensively again, and I can see a lot of garbage time production for this Dallas offense when they're trying to close the gap late in games.
You know, that seems to be another example of offensive coordinator strategy coming into play pretty huge. It's a pretty detailed analysis. Okay, thanks guys, I appreciate it. Closing, If you want to know more and stay in the loop with our brilliant and noteworthy FNL info, follow us on Twitter at FNL Live and on Facebook at facebook.com/Fantasy Night Live. From all of us here at Fantasy Night Live, thank you and, well, good luck this weekend.
Oh, football game practice flags, penalty on the field. I pooped.
Yeah, this is brutal.
Quiet. Quiet, stupid baby. I got a serious addiction going now. Thanks a lot, Johnny Football.
That paragraph's just not working. I can't read that. How am I supposed to read that? That's not thought, that says though. Cut.